Okay. Aren't you
So
kind of close or not? Or is it the right distance?
it's the right distance.
You seem to be crowding me compared to last time.
Is that better?
I think you can zoom in if you want. You were invading my space. So, a couple days ago, we asked people on Facebook and some of the forums what they'd like to hear in regards to a video. We did, or what they'd like to hear about. We did film a video that day, but it just didn't work out. There were some issues. So, we're going to redo that video, and hopefully it turns out as good. I think the old one was pretty good, but hopefully this one turns out as good, but it'll be what it is. So
Yeah, you were feeling it that day.
yeah, so
That's all right.
whatever it is what it is. So we're gonna try again. People had questions about like upcoming kits and updates regarding those. More specifically, a Hawken, a pistol, brown bess, left-handed, percussion, SMR, etc. We just finished up the Fowler kit. Been in production for, I don't know, 2, 3 months, couple months, something like that. And it's a lot of work, a huge amount of work developing new kits. So we haven't started another kit yet. We're just kind of catching up and trying to take care of production and so forth and so on. So we haven't begun anything, but the next one I feel pretty certain will be a Hawken, just because there's so much interest in it, and I think it'll be a real good kit for production purposes. A lot of the parts can be machined very carefully and require very little hand work, so it'll be a good kit for us, I believe.
Can you go into why a kit takes so long? Why, like, you
Yeah.
can't just like
So
push a button?
yeah, so basically, from the largest perspective, what we have to do is we have to basically create a digital code that describes the whole gun. Every piece of it and every surface and every form and every point, basically. And it's hard to do. So these things aren't automatically generated by AI or something. These are things that we have to design, or I have to design, and then they're converted to ones and zeros and stored digitally, so then it can be repeated. And it's very difficult to do. Many times more difficult than just building a gun by hand. And you have to make it so it's capable of going into production. Some parts can easily be manufactured, some parts can't. There's just a lot to it.
You're not just designing the product, you're having to design how to make the product,
Yeah,
fixtures,
yeah,
and everything. Every little part
yes.
needs
And
to
when we're
fit
making the
together.
number of guns that we're making, or number of parts we're making, it needs to be efficient. It needs to be efficient so we can sell it at a fair price and then still have some money left over for ourselves. That's the challenge. A lot of technology really helps you to be efficient, but then there's still things where certain technology we don't have, or equipment we don't have, or it doesn't really fit. So there's still some handwork considerations. So yeah, there's just a lot to the whole process of developing a kit.
With the left-hand gun, specifically a left-hand kit, that's one where we get a lot of questions that really say you should just be able to reverse
Yeah,
the
yeah.
program. They say
So
they're CNC machinists, they know how it works.
yeah, so first of all, let me say that we don't have anything against left-handers. I know that they've probably some of them have had a hard time, you know, fitting into a right-handed world or whatever, but we don't have anything against them at all. It's just purely a matter of economics why we haven't made a left-handed kit. They're a pretty small percentage of the population, I don't know, 13% or something, I think. And it's just not a matter of flipping a program. There's fixtures involved and molds for investment cast parts, in particular the lock. There's just more complexities. Now, we're starting to machine more and more parts, and we're starting to machine them in a way that's using more sophisticated equipment that doesn't rely on fixturing as much. So as time goes on, it may be possible to do those sort of things with less effort, and for it to be a financially okay project. In the past we've used a lot of 3-axis machines where it requires multiple steps to make a part, fixturing, and that fixturing is specific to right, left-handed. Now we're using machines like mill turn machines that don't require specific fixturing. They're just, we'll show you one here a little later in the video, but it's just held with a chuck basically and feeds bar stock out, and it can be machined. That's less dependent on fixturing and so forth. And we're also machining more parts rather than investment casting. We've been slowly whittling down the number of parts that we're casting, and we're continuing to do that. One of the biggest ones next will be probably the frizzen is going to be machined. When that's the case, being able to mirror something is easier with not having to worry about molds and not have to worry about specific work holding, fixturing, etc.
And then on one of the forums, you had brought up a brown Bess.
Mm-hmm.
And some customers are asking how serious you were. Was that just kind of...
Yeah, so, we want to do whatever we think we can make money on and what people want. And those go hand in hand, of course. There did seem to be a pretty good response to the idea of a brown Bess kit. I don't know much about military guns at all, but I do know that I like brown Besses. I like English guns, and they certainly have some stylistic details from early 18th century English guns, even civilian guns and so forth. So they're neat. It would be, in some ways, it'd be a neat project, but it wouldn't necessarily be the easiest project. There's a lot of parts, or at least a fair number of parts of the brown Bess, sling swivels, and I don't know, maybe the iron rammer would be a little tricky, and bayonet lugs, and it's a octagon to round barrel, which they're soldering on under lugs. So in some ways it'd be similar to our Fowler, but then a few more pieces added to it, like sling swivels and a few odds and ends. So it wouldn't be necessarily the easiest gun for us to produce, but it would be really neat. But the Hawken needs to come first because I think that people have been waiting for it, and I think it'll go over very well. It'll be percussion, and in terms of a Hawken, we're not going to make it exactly like some original Hawken. Some people really are in love with Hawkens, and they're okay, but for me, they have some issues, and specifically the weight of the barrel and the size of the forestock relative to the buttstock. To me, it's oftentimes like two different guns that are squished together in the lock area. The vast majority of our customers are not sticklers for tiny details. So we're going to balance things out, make the barrel a little lighter, by a little shorter, but still have the flavor of a Hawken for sure. And we want to get at least one, maybe a couple originals on hand that we can pull details off of, so it'll be really, really authentic in the feel. But some things that translate a little bit better into modern customers' expectations and how they like to shoot, we'll certainly adjust things a little bit. People don't want a 10 or 12 pound gun to carry around. Our customers won't like that. I'm sure there's a handful of Hawken rifles that have lighter barrels and so forth, but so that's the idea with the Hawken.
Are there any Hawkens you have your eye on that are out there?
I don't really know enough about them. I've been studying some about them, but I don't know enough about them. I do need to purchase one or get one on loan or something. It's about impossible to do a good job building a gun just from pictures. It's really hard to capture the feel of it. Left-handed, we talked about that. Percussion SMR, perhaps in time we'll do that. It's not real high on the list, but it wouldn't be real difficult to do either. So maybe. Yeah, so everything takes time and effort. And, there's always the production to keep up with. But we want to keep adding the right products that people want, and also at the same time products that we don't represent very well currently. So we don't want to make a new product that kind of eats away of our current products. Part of running a successful business is developing the business so it can run on its own, that it's not dependent on the person who started the business or the people that started the business. And that and allows it to be scalable. Otherwise, you're working in some ways for a wage, and the business doesn't produce unless you're part of it, which, as a business owner, that's not the ideal situation. It basically limits growth is what it does. So we're looking for somebody that has, like currently we have about 15 people that work here, maybe a little more, but we don't really have anyone that has a muzzleloading background, using them, shooting them, or more importantly, how to build them, a custom gun builder's approach. So that would be something that'd be very beneficial, because there's a lot of tasks that our employees are fantastic, but there's some tasks that I have to do because they're just a little more technical. And somebody that has hand skills and ability to build custom guns at a high level would fit in very, very well. Not only from just their ability to perform tasks, but also to advise, customer service, and there's any number of tasks that would, replace me in some ways, which would be really, really good. Then I could spend my time in other areas. It's a position that we would pay very well for, and is a great opportunity for someone. Life as a custom gun maker might be rewarding, but I don't think it's financially rewarding very often. And we have a stable company and offer benefits, and there's a heck of a lot of opportunity here. I've actually kind of been shocked that we've not had more of a response. It's kind of baffling in some ways.
I think that I need to do a better job of posting it on our website and posting it out there a little bit further reach, because while we have an audience, and we're a very loyal, wonderful audience.
Mm-hmm.
It's not giant.
Yeah.
And there might be people that don't know
Yeah.
that would want to know.
And on top of that, I'd say that, it really is a fantastic place to work, and I think all of our employees would tell you the same thing. It's a really good environment. Everybody gets along. We have a great group of people. I may seem a little bit harsh or abrupt sometimes on forums or whatever, but it's not like that in person. I'm a good guy and flexible, and it's really a great place to work. Okay, someone asked a question about staining a gun with green dye, and I don't know much about staining guns with vivid colors. We're traditionally focused company. Guitar people like to use dye stains a lot with vivid colors, so that would be the place to
There's
look.
a lot of really great guitar
Videos, YouTube videos. Somebody asked about staining cherry with lye, and I've never done it. I've seen, foot's going to sleep. I've seen a good number of guns that have been stained with lye, with cherry, and it makes it kind of a deep, dark red. It looks pretty good, but you ought to be able to find a lot of information online about that. There's some options I know. You can use Red Devil lye mixed in a solution, put on the stock, the cherry. You can also use Easy Off Oven Cleaner, which is basically a lye solution, a very basic solution. I think it's good to rinse it off afterwards so you don't have a lot of that residual on the surface, because it can affect finishing, I believe, but I'm not sure about that either. So I can't really add too much about the lye staining of cherry.
cherry with anything else?
I've never finished a cherry stock, so never have. Now we've, you can adjust the color with dye stains as well. They're very versatile. You can mix it with the finish, or you can mix it with alcohol or water, and you can always adjust the color with dye stains, so it works pretty good. Also, I don't think I've ever done it. We purchased a chemical called potassium dichromate, and it's not potassium permanganate, it's potassium dichromate. I guess it's kind of hazardous, so that's why it can be poisonous. That's why we've not used it. But what it does is it speeds up the oxidation process of the cherry very fast. So you get that very warm, aged cherry look, but you don't have to wait for it with sun exposure to the sun. Some furniture building friends have let me know about that. That did really, really high-end work, and I guess it works well.
What about staining walnut?
Yeah, so we mentioned that with walnut, talk a little bit, maybe offer some products for finishing walnut. We haven't done that yet, but we still intend to. Walnut can vary a lot. Some walnut can vary in color a lot. It can vary in density a lot. It can vary in the amount of porosity it has or how tight the grain is. So there's a wide range of walnut. With our Fowler that we offer in walnut, originally these guns were made in England. They weren't stocked in American black walnut. They're stocked in English walnut, European walnut, but that's very hard to get and quite expensive. So we've made a small compromise by offering it in American black walnut. But there are some things that can be done to the black walnut to make it look more like English walnut. You know, one thing is filling the grain because the pores can be a little bit bigger. So there's some products you can use to fill the grain, and also using some dye stains to take away a little bit of the purplish color or the really chocolatey brown color and get it more towards, you know, a little more towards the amber or red color in the walnut.
Which color?
So yellow is used a lot, you know, kind of like a fairly strong yellow will take away that purpley color, you know, like a wash coat of dye stain.
Opposite on the color wheel.
Is that why it works? And then also like some, which is similar, like some honey amber colors could work pretty well, I think. And then maybe even some reds at the end to try to, or it wouldn't have to be at the end, but some reds to boost that red hue a little bit might be a nice choice. The dye stains you can add to the wood, you can also add to the finish. You have a lot of versatility. One thing with staining guns is maybe some people work differently, but whenever I stain something, it's kind of like an experiment each time, where you just kind of keep adjusting things and try new things, and it's not like you get it stained exactly how you want and you build up finish from there. Usually there's adjusting with color as you go, and even as you're building up finish, you can tone it, you can use different dye stains, even that sometimes can penetrate through the finish a little bit. You can add them to the finish. So it's just this continual process.
It's not really a formula for the most part that you use.
No, there's really not.
Dye stains.
And I kind of experimented. Recently I used, on the first Fowler that we finished, that was in maple, I used some, whatever the color is from Laurel Mountain Forge, that's the honey maple. Yeah, used that to start with, and then I used some dye stain to color certain areas and darken certain areas. So, and it has a neat look, has a nice look.
It has a very neat look, and we'll be raffling that for hospice.
Yes.
So check out the links.
So stay tuned for that.
Yeah.
Yep, hospice, everybody knows how great hospice is, and they probably at least have some friends or family where they've helped out with, so it'd mean a lot if you can, you know, throw in a few bucks towards the raffle, and you never know, you might win. Okay, back to tuning a lock for speed. So with regards to our locks, there's really not much that needs to be done or really can be done to improve speed. Our locks are known to be quite fast. There's not anything that I would recommend. And it's really one of those things where, you know, they're made carefully, made precisely, and it's not something we would recommend for people to monkey with too much unless you have a lot of experience. We're working on making the trigger pull a little more consistent, and maybe it's been pretty good lately, our trigger pull on our locks, but you know, it's a very sensitive thing. There's a lot of factors that can affect it, and it's very sensitive unless you do, you know, some hand work. It's just can be kind of tricky. Our trigger pulls have been pretty good. We're thinking about making some kind of a test rig where we can check the pull on the sear on every lock, so that'll monitor where we're at and how well we're doing. But we're making parts on new equipment, and it's a little bit more consistent. That's most of the questions that I have on my sheet here that I remember. Oh, one other thing that we didn't talk about, but I showed on a forum. So one project we are working on right now, new project, is some relief carving, CNC cut relief carving, and just a little practice stock. And this is actually a Fowler, or not a Fowler, but a Woods Runner stock. So we're working on figuring out ways to do relief carving on it. And it's to do good relief carving that doesn't require hand work is pretty tricky. Like this didn't have any hand work at all done on it. Wire brush and then some Scotch-Brite on it. But anyway, we've been figuring out ways to create the model. Having a really good model is the first step to be able to machine this really well. So we've spent a lot of time, but we're figuring out strategies and ways to accomplish it, where it can be done basically indistinguishable from hand carving, and at the same time done efficiently, that doesn't need a lot of labor. On top of that, that doesn't need highly specialized labor. Like I said, it's not easy. This is my first attempt actually of cutting a stock here, and I can't be more thrilled at how it's looking right now.
How does it differ from the carving that's on the Fowler?
Yeah, so there's different ways, without going into too many details, there's different ways to model a part. You know, sometimes you can start with scan data, which is laser scanning, and then through various means you can create a 3D CAD model from the scan data. So that's a solid model. But in my experience, there's often compromises with that, where the quality of the model suffers a little bit, specifically with regard to all the details of the carving. Now this, on the other hand, I started with just a stock model for our Woods runner, and then actually manually modeled the carving in. So there's not only V lines, incise lines, but more importantly, there's relief to this, which is what relief carving is. So to get all that to work on the model and blend surfaces together, these complex shapes, it's pretty difficult, but it can be done, and the results are you can have something that looks great and doesn't require a lot of handwork and is efficient. So
When will that be ready, you think?
I don't know when that's going to be ready. It could be ready in months, or it could be a year. I don't know. It's just, I only work on it when I have the time to, you know. And there's other things that, like production, is getting the guns that you've ordered out the door is more important.
This is like your weekend.
Yeah, this is kind of like my fun. So it's working out well, but there's still more to do. This area here, in some ways, is one of the easier areas. You know, up through the wrist, it's going to be a little more complicated, but it'll have comb carving and tang carving and lock panel moldings and lower buttstock molding as well. So eventually, we might even add an inlay or two, maybe a thumb piece. So eventually the goal is to create a fully carved gun that is good as any custom gun, basically, that is available at a very, very affordable price. Now there is more time with this and machine time, so there still will be a cost to it, but we're trying to make that cost as reasonable as possible, because when we make a cost that's reasonable, then people want to buy it, you know, and then we end up being more successful ourselves. So it's like win-win, you know. It's easy to just say, oh, you have to charge for your time, but have you really put in enough effort to try to figure out a better way? And that's one thing that we do well. We work very, very hard to try to find good ways of making parts, and that's in large part a reason why we've had the success we've had. Another thing here, you might have noticed this pile of wood behind us here. So this is some wood we got recently, and it's pretty awesome. We're happy to have gotten it. See if there's a couple areas that have been planed down a bit. See if anybody can guess what it is.
Which gun is it going to be available?
So it's thick stuff. So this is almost 3 inches, I think. So it could be made into any of the guns. It's not 100% dry yet, so we have to cut it. We have a little bit more than this that we already have cut up, but we have to cut it up and dry it in the kiln, and eventually it'll be ready, but it's going to take just a little time. So here's something kind of interesting. See that? And let's see if there's any other examples. Here's another example. This might help tip you off of what it is. There, and there. Pointing to those holes. Yeah. So most of the wood we buy, if it's cut up, it's green. Although we do buy some dried wood if it's available. The majority, I'd say, is green. You know, after it's cut, we have a small sawmill, and we have cut up some wood ourselves, but we're not currently doing a lot of that right now. We've developed enough sources for the green wood that it's just a little bit easier for us. We don't have to try to track down logs and find them, and it's a lot of work finding quality enough wood to be able to cut up the logs ourselves. But back to the green wood, it's either kept outside in a covered area, allowed to dry for a period of time. Or in here we have dehumidifiers running that keeps the moisture down pretty darn good. So it allows it to dry in the board form to some degree. We like to get it down to maybe around 15%. And then we cut out stock blanks. You can see a bunch of stock blanks over here. So we cut out stock blanks and seal the ends, and then they go in a kiln. They get stickered, so you can see a big pile of them over here. So stickers means to have gaps between the stock blanks so air can circulate around each stalk and allow it to dry more fully. So that stack was in the kiln, so it's dry, but it's ready to be used. So I don't know, there's about 180, I think, typically that we get in a kiln load. Top half is cherry and the bottom half is maple. It's easier to dry blanks, and the reason being, first of all, we're not drying a bunch of wood that we're not using. It's just a waste of energy and time. If you're drying a plank, there's a tremendous amount of waste that's not part of the gun. So cutting out a blank is a really good thing in that regard, and plus it dries faster because you have a larger surface area to volume. So I think drying is a surface controlled process where the amount of your surface area that you have dictates how efficiently the part is dried. And there's less stress too, I think, when it's dried in smaller forms rather than big wide planks. They'll crack up and things. So that's,
now that we have this big building, part of it was to be able to better handle wood.
Definitely. So yeah, in order to handle wood well, you really need a good bit of area. Then you can pick up stacks, the forklift, you can move them over to the area where you cut blanks out. Doing that all in a small area, it requires just a lot of handwork, and it's much, much less efficient.
We used to have to roll our bandsaw out on nice days.
Yeah, outside when we didn't have time. So it's changed a lot. And this is we're probably talking plenty, but this is a bandsaw here that we use for cutting out stock blanks. It's a Tanowitz made in Grand Rapids, Michigan, 1950s. 1960s, still one of the best saws you can own. 36-inch bandsaw, has I think a 7.5 horsepower motor on it. Right now we're doing a little maintenance, a little work on it. We've pulled off the wheels, the 36-inch wheels, and the tires, the vulcanized tires on the wheels need reground, retrued. So we've sent those to a place to have that work done, and having the guides rebuilt too. So just a piece of equipment that works very well for big wood. And we have 2 of these Tanowitz saws, and we like them a lot. Yeah, there were times when we were very, very low on wood in previous years, and it can be pretty scary. Keeping more of an inventory of wood, although there's cost to that. If you shoot back here, you can see quite a bit of wood, and we have more in other places too. More outside, more in a barn. So it can be, there's a significant cost to this wood, tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars, lots of money, could be more than 100 grand worth of wood. It probably is more, but it gives that security that, because you don't want to run out and you want to have it available. Yeah, let's see here. There's also, well, we don't want to show that. I think those are all sold, so we don't want to show those now. I think we've got a little bit more time. 12:45, we've got a half hour. No, let's go into the shop. It's very difficult to film through a door, but we're doing the best we can for you to get a little bit of an idea. And I think you can see it decently. So it's now milling the rough profile of a tumbler. Looks like it's stopping. I'm going to do a tool change. The smaller tool, it's refining the shape of the tumbler. And we'll let it run here for a few minutes, then we'll bring you back and show you the cutoff process and how it works on the back of the part. Here it's drilling a hole for the fly, I believe. Gonna come and mill the, well, it's reaming the hole for the fly next. Probably not necessary to ream that, but we've just always have. Cutting the fly pocket. So it'll switch to a smaller tool to cut the fly pocket a little closer to finished size. I think it's doing a little deburr cycle now, so it's using a chamfer tool or a V-shaped tool to get rid of burrs that are created in the machining process. Okay, now it's going to start to prepare to cut it off. So it's going to create, with this parting tool is going to create the large axle of the tumbler. And usually we're running coolant, but we just turned it off so we can film, which we can probably get away with it fine for a part or two. I think a little smaller, well, it's a parting tool, I think with a little tighter corner radius or something on it, I believe. Now it's cutting the tapered square shaft, so that head is moved off 90 degrees, so the square shaft of the tumbler it's cutting. Being able to do this all in one operation is tremendous in terms of repeatability and accuracy. So I think now it's going to cut off the part. So it's cutting it nearly all the way through, but not all the way through. And here's going to be a neat thing that'll happen next. This has a special vise on it that flopped up. Come on, special custom jaws. It'll grab the part and the spindle will spin to break the part free. It broke it off. There's just a tiny bit connecting it.
Oh, that's cool.
Now it's able to work on the back face of the tumbler. It's in the vise. Right there. So now we're able to do any work on the back face of the part. Faces it off with an end mill. Now it's going to drill and tap for the tumbler screw. A little smaller drill now. I'm going to give it a little coolant now when it taps, just to make sure. Tapping can sometimes be a problem. And then from the unloader, parts come out on this belt. So here's finished parts. And you'll see the finished one come out here in just a second. Here it is. So this is the part. Wipe off the coolant that you just saw machined. Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah, that is cool.
We're in the production office now, and a few things that I'd like to mention. We just got done showing some of the equipment and how capable it is and sophisticated it is, but it's important to note that we didn't start with hardly any equipment. You know, we started with the machine that didn't make stalks. That's the only CNC equipment we had, and it was a relatively low-priced machine. So over time, we've grown, we've made money, invested in equipment that's more capable, allows us to make things faster and better and cheaper and to be more successful as a business. So it's just good to note that, you know, this stuff didn't happen overnight. We've been going about 8 or 9 years, and it takes time. But you know, the technology certainly pays off. This is Justin. Justin has been with us about 2 years. He does most of our programming these days. Helps out in the shop in various ways, run machines, set up machines. But he's a big asset and has helped out a lot with making these new machines run in particular, because they're more complicated you know, than simpler machines. So he's been very important. So this is what's called a 3D model. So it's a digital representation of what the stock actually is in 3 dimensions. I can roll it around and move it all around. You have to have a model before you can make a part. In particular, you can see some of the carving on here. This has all been modeled in by hand. So there's different strategies and tools you can do to try to create this. So it has the full shape. It's not just like a drawing on the surface. You know, it shows relief in all the different areas, and areas are scooped out where they're scooped out, and the V tools are the V cuts or the V cuts, and they transition into non-V cut areas. So it's all modeled in. So it's basically the same thing as doing it by hand. When you're modeling it, it's just you're trying to get the computer to generate the form of it with the tools that it has, rather than having chisels or gouges, which is kind of interesting. So the strategies of doing it, cutting material away in certain areas, is very similar to what it would be if you were doing it by hand. Yeah, so there's good and bad points. You know, you can adjust things and iterate over and over, so that's a good thing. One of the tough things is that what the computer shows is not actually the same as it looks when you make it, in terms of the weight of different areas. It accentuates certain features, and that's an important part of carving, is it needs to be balanced, but it's hard to know exactly from the computer screen how it's going to look when you make it, you know. But you learn over time. But it is good to be able to iterate over and over. It's difficult to do. There's weeks of work just in this little bit here. So it's time consuming, but powerful and good. So that's what I know. So that we haven't answered. We haven't even scratched the surface of the questions that were asked. But you know, these videos take time too. So we'll just keep on going, try to do all we can. If we haven't talked about your question, you know, don't take it personally at all. It's probably just that we just didn't have time to get to it at all, and we'll try to keep on going with it.
Yeah,
But we have
another one.
we have an appointment here soon, so we probably need to wrap it up.